To whom much is given, much is required. Part of that requirement is sharing. Culture is the heartbeat within our lives, and it's at the core of so many things. While we live in a time when we are starving for wisdom, I welcome you to your wisdom retreat at Culture Raises Us.
Tab Nkhereanye, today's guest, senior level music executive at BMG with over 20 plus years of experience working with the likes of the Madonnas of the world, Justin Bieber's, Mary J. Blige, Britney Spears, to name a few. Songwriter here. He is definitely what I say a creative first, and has a passion that kind of speaks to the language of making hit records. Before we have him kind of walk us through his journey, I want to start with our signature question. And when you hear culture, what does that mean to you, my friend?
Culture is your village. Culture is it is a soundtrack, it is the essence, it is food, it is the energy of your culture, of your background and your village in which where you grew up. That's what I think of culture.
I love it. You know what, we're looking at, your background. I think it makes total sense that you're a very successful VP of A&R, given your extensive songwriting background. And it's also, I think, shows the ability to have an impact in the evolution of music culture, both inside and outside the boardroom. What kind of prompted you to make this shift from the creative side to the executive side of the business?
Great question. It's funny because I think I'm at that apex in my career where I can say this. I did 12 and a half years on each side right now. So I'm entering my 25th year.
Wow.
So, I really woke up one day and songwriting for me wasn't a job. It was something that I loved, but in Atlanta, we approach it very similar to how they do it in Nashville. Like, we went to work every day. We went to the studio. Atlanta as Black Nashville, we went to go write songs, and we approached it from a work-like perspective. Like whatever was on the calendar, whatever artist was coming to town, whatever schedule was on the schedule. So we went to work every day. And in life, I believe in flow and change. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in the back of the studio about 10 to 12 years in my career, 10 to 11 years in my career. And I said, I really want to become an A&R. And, I said that to myself quietly, and then I started letting some people know that those were my aspirations. And then I tell people this, to be honest with you, the real thing that pushed me over the edge was I discovered this songwriter from New Orleans, but I met him here in LA, and he gave me his demo, and I listened to this demo. I didn't listen to it right away. And I said, I'll get to it. And I left it in a car. And someone that I was seeing at the time, she said to me, she's like, man, these songs that you wrote are phenomenal. And I'm like, great, thank you. Because she was driving my car and I didn't have it. And I'm going to date myself because this was on the CD. So she was listening to the CD and she was like, oh, these songs you wrote are amazing. And, and she's like, well, why'd you write this song about running away and getting married? And I'm like, I never wrote no song about running away and getting married. I said, oh shit, that's probably that kid that I met when I was in LA. And I was like,
love that.
Let me go back and listen to these songs. And I've heard these songs, and these songs were fucking phenomenal. And so I heard these songs, and this kid was so prolific, so amazing. And I believe Father Time, which is still undefeated, told me, I'm a very big sports fan, so I'll make a quick sports reference. So at some point when you're playing and you're on the court and you're hooping, and here comes this young kid, and you realize, as an old man, I can't move the way I can. I can't jump the way I can.
1,000%.
And this kid came in and he crossed me up creatively. And I was like, I'm not as good as this kid. Long story short, I ended up getting a publishing gig, consultancy, in my very first publishing gig. I said, I got to sign this kid. And this kid turned out to be Frank Ocean. So,
you're joking on that's the person who motivated you.
Frank Ocean retired my pen.
Because it's so many ironies to this. I have three girls, and two of my girls have turned. I don't want to say turned me on. I was always familiar with Frank Ocean, but my true appreciation for him has built tremendously since my daughters have played him so much. So it's so funny and very interesting, really, how you talk about the impact of his sound, his talent, his creative genius, being able to influence somebody who can then influence others.
Yeah.
Right. About his greatness, which is exactly what happened to you, where your partner at that time, was talking to you about this amazing song that you wrote, and you then find out that wasn't mine.
That wasn't me.
No, that's so beautiful. And then look at the birth of Frank Ocean.
Yeah, and so my very first gig was that I was a consultant for the company in which I'm now senior vice president at. And I was like, hey, I got to sign this kid. I was like, I know I just got here, but I said, this kid's amazing. And so he was my very first deal I ever made, my very first signing. And I was, he and I grew together in this business. He went on to become, yes, one of the greatest artists of our generation, and the greatest songwriters, one of the greatest just creative individuals. But I saw that, and I say that, I can't say that I saw all this because, I tell people this story all the time. When we were working together, so what the first thing I did was I said, okay, I got to recoup this deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a young executive, I'm like, okay, cool. I gave this kid, cut this kid a check, so now I got to get this money back. And, I felt it incumbent to let me go pitch his records. I was like, let's go get you a record deal because you'll be an amazing artist, blah, blah, blah. So first thing I did is I called Scooter Brown. I said, Scooter, I got this kid named Frank, Lonnie Bro. I said, I got to put some songs. You got to hear this kid. He'd be great for Justin Bieber. Frank's first cut was a song called Bigger, and it was on Justin's album. So I was pitching songs. I was like, okay, cool, Frank, we're in business now. Now I'm pitching songs. You got to cut on this kid named Justin Bieber from Canada. I think he's going to be pretty big.
I love the humble nature to these individuals. I think they're going to be pretty big.
Listen, at the time where I'm hustling, I could get Scooter on the phone. That should tell you
how much
how early in the game was. I ended up actually, that going back to, because actually I wrote Bieber's very first single one time. So in my songwriting days, I wrote his very first single. So I had a relationship with Scooter and had been able to place a lot of songs. And so I was like, wow, cool. I know I can get this song on this album. So I did that. And then one of the other funny story was, so I called my friend, great producer, Tricky Stewart, who was an executive at Def Jam at the time. And I said, Trick, listen, man, I signed this kid. I think he's I think he'll be an amazing artist. You really got to do this deal. Just take a listen to the music and hopefully you love it. And Tricky's like, all right, cool. I'm actually driving to Vegas, so I'll pop it in the CD and when I'm on my way to Vegas. And 2 months had gone by and Tricky hadn't called me back about this music. And I'm like, yo, man, when you get to listen to this kid, I'm trying to tell you, he's amazing. And Trick's like, I'll get to it. And Trick called me on his drive back from Vegas. And he's like, yo, where's this kid at? And I'm like, I said, you finally listened to it. I was like, shit, he's right here, whatever. He's like, yo, let's do a deal at Def Jam. And I said, amazing. And I was like, okay, this is finally working out. So I called Frank, got him a record deal. Tricky signed him to Def Jam. And I'll never forget, I was landing at the airport one day and I was driving, and I'll never forget, there was an article. There's a big music editor here with the LA Times, and I'll never forget, he wrote an article about Frank, and I literally had the newspaper as I was landing, and this article happened, and my phone just started blowing up, and I'm like, this is when he put out Nostalgia Ultra.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, like, this is fucking crazy. I said, yo, bro, I think people love you. I think this shit is about to happen. And it kind of happened like that. And I'll never forget, everybody in the business was like, yo, where's this kid at that you got? Where's this kid? They were calling me, where's this kid? Where's this kid? Where's this kid? Including people at Def Jam who did not know they had him signed.
Wow. That part.
Yeah. So so to answer your story long-winded, I made the decision to become an executive based off me meeting a kid named Lonnie Bro / Frank Ocean.
No, I love that. And another element in here is it sounds like the muscle and the desire for patience right? Because a number of the things that you mentioned, nothing hit quote unquote immediately.
Yeah.
It took that patience and that discernment to let it sit, and when it was time, it was going to be. And you saw that through. And as I'm already listening to, with all the artists, labels, and companies you've worked with over the years, was there a moment where you realized just how big and instrumental this music culture was to overall culture of life?
Yeah, man, I grew up on this thing, man. It's a language that I've been speaking since I was a kid, and a language that I've been listening to. And so my brother was a radio DJ at UC Santa Cruz up in the Bay, and I would always just hang out with him. He had like a midnight rotation, so I would just be like, under there with the records, be like, hey, you should try to play this, play this, play this, and I would just study credits and just any which way I can get close to the music. So, yeah, for me, music has just always just been a part of my culture, and it's funny. I was telling somebody the other day, literally just. We sometimes we get lost in the business of it all because it's just what we do for a living. But at the core, at the core, I'm here because I love music, and it's that hasn't changed. And a lyric, a good melody, an amazing hook, still drives me to this day.
Mhm. I guess that's also the beauty of doing something that you love, so it doesn't seem like work every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were talking about your brother. So you're a first generation immigrant from South Africa, correct?
Yes.
And so you literally, made your way into this industry, very similar to how I see even like an Afro beats and music from the African diaspora that's kind of making this significant mark on music culture in general. What's your thoughts on the emerging, global influence that Africa is having in particular?
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
We're just getting started. As long as I think it's important to take ownership of it. I think it's important to make sure that it doesn't lose its essence. Amapiano's been around for 4 or 5 years. People were telling me about Amapiano 4 years ago, and sending me Amapiano artists, and now you hear Amapiano in A&R meetings, and you're like, it's the gift and the curse, because great music knows no borders, right?
That's right.
It should be for the world. You just want to make sure that it doesn't get watered down by the world, and the essence of what it is. Listen, it's what hip hop was, right? So it's we know where the home of hip hop is, and we understood how hip hop had its roots, and why it's still to this day, the voice of a lot of the unheard, what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that Afrobeats, the just overall Amapiano, whatever you want to break it down to, still resonates from the continent, and that people from the continent get the credit. People from the continent are behind the music. People from the continent are behind the business decisions of the music.
That's right. That's
They're
right.
just not the creators of the music.
That's right.
And for me, that is very important.
It sounds like it could take a learning from the journey and the history of hip hop. And because as you made the comment of taking ownership and not lose its essence, I was thinking to myself, he's definitely speaking from a place of reference. Mm-hmm. There's obviously something that's taken place that spurred this comment, and you alluded to it in hip hop. And so, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think that's going to look like, right? Because that's going to be a new discipline, a new understanding, because we have a significant learning on the evolution of hip hop, the impact of hip hop, which is an IP that we've created, but now has to certain degrees been what you would call watered down, utilized, or benefited by many others who probably are not from the diaspora. How do we now, with Afrobeats, ensure, what are some of the things that you would recommend? Here are the things that we have to do. And I think you kind of alluded to a couple, but what are the things we have to do to ensure that it's not the same as?
Great question. I think those, I think a footprint on the continent, from labels is necessary. Rather than us people having to travel here, I think it's important for labels and those alike to go there, and to not bastardize it, and to understand what it is. Listen, when you get off the plane and you go to Nashville, every major label is in Nashville. They're all there, right? And Nashville's done an amazing job they put a fence around country music. If you want to be in country music, you have to go and you have to spend time in Nashville. You can't be in country music on Wilshire Boulevard, because then it's not country music. So I guess in the sense, it's very similar to what has to take place for African music, for music of the continent, for music of the origin of it. So I think that's important for labels and people and independents and all that. They have to be on the continent.
Unapologetically too.
Unapologetically. And do business with people on the continent.
Yeah, what you just said about Nashville, I mean, made it so clear of a picture of what's needed, right? When you said Nashville put a fence around country music and nobody's coming after them for doing so, right? It's maintaining the purity and the essence of that genre, which is such a great example of what can be applied elsewhere. Yes. And so, as you talk about that, I also think about, all right, then how do you approach now diversity and inclusion in your role, ensuring that, a variety of voices and perspectives are kind of respected in the artists who you work with, or represented, I should say, in the artists you work with and the music you kind of support, which is very similar, kind of an evolution to the answer that you just gave.
You're saying in terms of the artists that I currently work with?
Well, yeah, and just in general, in the music business, right? We talk about diversity and inclusion in a very corporate sense, right? But I think in the music sense, there's this opportunity to approach it in a very unique way to ensure that certain, certain types of people or voices are represented, right? And again, Afrobeats kind of being a part of that. From an inside perspective, I'd love to get your thoughts on how you approach that when I say inside, from an A&R standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen, again, it's go to those who are making the music and speak to those who are making the music. And I think it's important to educate those about all aspects of the business, those that are making the music. Educate them and let them know how to grow a business, how to build their business, how to scale their business, in and out of the studio, in and off stage. I think for me, that's one of the things that I love to do. And I feel a kinship, especially to those that are making that music. I had some conversations today with some people on the continent this morning in Johannesburg, because I'm actually taking a trip there in February. So I'm setting up meetings, and last time I was there, I sat with Tebow Touch, who is the biggest DJ, and I got a chance to go spend some time with him. So for me, it's about going to those people and letting them know, listen, we America is, if you make it here, you make it anywhere. But at the end of the day, we're not coming without respect for what you're building. But I think it's about, to answer your question, it's a little bit about education, letting people know how to do it, how to build it. But for the most part too, like, man, a lot of these kids are doing such amazing things from a dance perspective and creating their own content. So it's just a matter of time. But yeah, I want to make sure that people understand how important ownership is.
Now, ownership is a huge thing. And when you talk about ownership, I look at, the recognition that also comes with it, right? And what it is that we've created within this Black community and what this has brought to the world, which is often then, borrowed, appropriated, and inspired other, cultures and industries. The ownership piece is a huge, huge component that I feel we have to do a better job of carving out that equity, right? And ensuring from the start, we are owning the IP that we created. And given that this culture has impacted so much, and in shaping, music culture, it feels like there's a significant disparity in seeing more Black-owned record labels and things to that degree. What do you think is needed to kind of shift this greater equity and ownership conversation and balance in the industry?
I won't simplify it, but I'll tell you one of the things that's needed. So, I had a friend of mine who was like, Why do you want to work at a label? Why do you need people inside a label? Why do you want to work at a label? Go build your own thing. I told him, I said, listen, I said, if there's not a person inside the building that looks like me,
listen, that's
they won't understand you.
That's right. That's right.
The way I understand you. And at the time in which I understand you, listen, anybody can find you when you're hot. There's enough algorithms. We're all staring at the same shit, at the same data, right? But at the same time, it's like you need somebody inside of a building who speaks your language, who looks like you. It's why Latin departments are in buildings. It's because you're not going to find somebody doing regional Mexican music, and when he goes to do a label, there's going to have to be somebody inside the company that understands regional Mexican music. And it's no different to me what happens with our culture. Listen, man, Black folk need to talk to Black people inside a building. Black folks, we need to translate some things inside of a building. I've done it when I was at Def Jam for 6 years. There'd be many times when I'd be like, listen here, you want to get this deal done, this is how we have to do it, this is how you have to present it, this is how we talk about it. You need somebody inside the building.
Internal advocates
who can translate, who can help get your vision across the board so that it makes sense to everybody so that we can get this deal across the finish line.
Yeah, and that approach, is very different from how many people would think to answer that question, right? We figure out ways of how to get more Black-owned labels, but we don't see the significance of ensuring that there's representation in the rooms to ensure that those opportunities can then happen, right? Because we many of us who are inside these buildings, we're also educators,
yes,
right? We're providing the information to those who don't live the culture, who don't understand the culture, are not of the culture. But it's our jobs to educate and inform them, to bring them along so that the culture can be what the culture needs to be and the individuals within it. So I love the way you just answered that of, no, we still need a bunch of us inside these buildings to do this work so that those labels can happen and those things can happen.
Right. Yes.
So talk to me about the definition of stardom in this music industry, which I think is kind of transformed over the years tremendously. And in your opinion, what kind of defines like a music artist as a star in today's digital age? Because I think that's shifted the industry as well.
Well, there's hit songs.
Can't take away a hit record.
And there's stars. I really don't believe that stars. What was a star? Who was a star in the 90s would be a star today.
Would not.
Would be.
Okay.
I still believe the essence of what a star is when they walk in the room. They carry themselves differently than anybody else that's in the room. I believe that Doja Cat, who is a current star, would be a star in 1998, 1988, 2018, and 2028. So to me, when we say a star in today's industry, there are just not as many. But the essence of a star hasn't changed.
With Bruno Mars, why does Bruno come to mind? When you gave the analogy of somebody being a star in each kind of decade, would Bruno fall within that mix for you?
100%.
Yeah, I felt that. Because when you just broke that down about Doja, I was like, wow, what other artists can you see like being a star in the 80s, 90s, maybe even the 70s? And Bruno was just like...
Bruno could have rocked the Grammy stage in the 90s.
Easily.
And killed it then as much as he could kill it today. So again, there are just not as many Brunos and Doja Cats walking around here.
That's facts.
I think the bar. I think you listen. I don't want to sound like the old guy in the club, but I think the bar is low. And I think, when you have a star, man, it's just when you come across one of those, they're rare. You know what I mean? And they're just hard to find. But yeah.
Yeah, but you said, I don't want to sound like the old guy, but to a degree, there was an era where we saw artists or things develop,
yes,
mature,
Yes.
And I do think we're in an era now where the market and the consumers look for it to be immediate. Microwave. I call it the microwave era. We're very much in the microwave era. We got to have some put in for like 30 seconds and it needs to pop immediately. Where, we come from a time where it was the oven era, where you put something in, you let that thing marinate, operation marination. You got all the seasons kind of work together, and then it came out. It was this magical experience.
Right.
And I feel like that, I don't know if the appetite is there so much anymore for that type of journey and that build.
God, I tend to agree with you, unfortunately. I think, not that there's any first week album sales anymore, because no one does that anymore.
Exactly.
But to your point, that artist development is kind of, an antiquated term these days. You know what I'm saying? And but a lot of it has to be done on your own, right? So a lot of it is, you're hustling and you're getting your songs out. You're putting your songs. You call it just getting your songs on Spotify. You're doing all this your own. You're shooting your own content. You're finding your own way. My only thing what I wish there was more of is that there were less people trying to be like the guy next door, the artist next door, right? I believe that there was so much individualism when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And I think it's still out there in some artistry. It's out there, but I remember when Missy said something a while ago. When she was in her heyday writing records, she just never listened to the radio.
That's right. Never to be influenced by it.
Everything you got from her was authentically her, and it wasn't influenced. It wasn't, and I didn't think when she said it, it didn't come across as from a very arrogant standpoint. It just, I got it, and I took it as the creativity came from within. It flowed from within. It didn't need to come from anywhere else. And I wish that there was more of that.
That purity.
Yeah. Listen, man, like I tell people my phrase is that we all have our own fingerprints. We should all have our own music, right? You know what I mean? And it's like when Eminem told you what 8 Mile was, you never heard of 8 Mile before. You never wanted to go to goddamn no 8 Mile.
Thanks.
When what you call it told you about East 1990, Bone Thugs and Harmony told you about East 1999 in Cleveland. You never knew what that was, but they brought you. You know what I'm saying? When Motown, you never heard of no Motown Philly. But when Boys and Men told you what Motown Philly was, they and they put the bow ties on. They brought you to where they were. There was individuality, and everybody had their own individuality, and they brought their own thing, their own uniqueness to the table. And I just believe, when Drake and everybody else put Toronto on, they represented where they were from, and they brought this whole thing, and they brought it in. It pulled you to where they were, where they were from. It gave you some insight creatively, and they told their stories. I just believe that's what's still missing. And it goes back to even what Outkast did, and and what they did, and they brought you to Atlanta, and people had never been there. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, and it's not being different for the sake of being different, because when you try to do that, then you're all gonna look the same. As crazy as that sounds, but it's the authenticity of your point of differentiation, the purity of, like you said, your fingerprint. Again, a beautiful analogy, and the reminder that literally we all have a song. Every one of us. God has gifted us. We're all just stewards of these gifts. The hope is that we all get to showcase whatever these gifts are. And some of them in the conversation that we're having in the literal sense of a song is beautiful, but we all have these songs. 100%. But I think that the beauty of the individuality of it and the authenticity of the storytelling, I think it is so rich, which is what you hit on. And I look at today's landscape and the rise of streaming platforms, right? And the way consumers are accessing and experiencing music has also changed. How has that kind of shifted to influence your approach as like an A&R to the development side of artists?
Another good question. Listen, no one sends you demos anymore. You know what I mean? So it's all
they don't. It's all I'm streaming. It's all streaming.
It's all streaming. So listen, so my approach is like, I'll take a listen to it. If it's up there, I'll listen to it. I don't always care about streams, numbers, and none of that, because I believe that if you find the right partner, somebody could elevate where you're going and help you elevate your vision. But if the songs are amazing, if the art is there, and there's a connection between the art and the artist, that's a beautiful day for me at an A&R. If you can find that gem and you build it. So for me, that's sort of been just still my approach.
Right, because I almost feel like, because remember there was a thing of breaking a new artist, or breaking new music. Is that even a thing anymore?
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't happen as much. We had a debate in my office this time last year, going into 2023, and we were all sitting around and we were like, no artist broke in 2022. And and everybody would be like, no, that's not necessarily true. And then something like a Jack Harlow, but no, Jack Harlow came out in 20 whatever. And then, but literally, we were saying no artist broke in the previous year, and people going back and forth. But that being said, artists come out, they don't break, and I guess we can all determine what breaking an artist is.
Right, that's all relative.
Hey, it's relative. I think at least if you have 2 hit songs. And you can sell some hard tickets, and there's an anticipation for your next records. I think, to me, that's an artist that broke.
So that's the new definition for you.
Yeah. If you have multiple songs that you could stick the microphone out for the crowd, and they could sing them back word for word, you get the big stage of Coachella coming in at Coachella, and you have a hard ticket, and people are excited to, when you're finally going to hit the road.
How about that?
That's an artist that's broken.
Who do you think has had, and this is a very loaded question, but who do you think's had the largest impact on shaping music culture? Is there an individual or individuals or a movement that you feel have been played a significant role in shifting music culture?
Ooh, the business or the culture?
Ooh, look at you. Okay, you know what? I want to go both, so that we can then go through the differentiation of why and how you pose that.
Well, Daniel Ek, the business.
Who?
Daniel Ek is, from a business perspective. I mean, listen, it's Spotify is changed everything.
Yeah.
From a culture perspective, I wow, that's a great question. I always tell people that from a historical standpoint, at least from my generation, L.A. Reid was very significant, and I don't always believe that people truly give him the flowers that he deserves from a perspective of what he did. And when I say what he did, was he brought music to the South, right? And culturally, people, when you think about the South, you think about, okay, it's just hip hop, it's just black music. That's not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because what L.A. Reid did, L.A. Reid gave voices to people like Jermaine Dupri, who's written the biggest pop songs for Mariah Carey. He gave Tricky Stewart his very first studio, who wrote Umbrella for Rihanna. He gave Dallas Austin some of his first biggest cuts, who's gone on the right, huge records for Gwen Stefani and everybody else. He signed Pink. So when people understand, he signed Justin Bieber. So it goes, what L.A. Reid did goes far beyond.
Just LaFace
in urban music.
Far beyond.
So I genuinely believe, in my generation, L.A. Reid is the most responsible for what culturally.
And so now I could see why you wanted the question to be broken up into 2 pieces, because it's a significant difference of one that kind of, for lack of a better word, laid the foundation in terms of the impact of what music can be, and that's outside of just urban, i.e. L.A. Reid, to what Daniel has done with Spotify from a service that's kind of changed the way in which we consume, listen, interact with music. So now that makes total sense for me in terms of why you broke it down from the beginning. So personal, the Tab documentary storyline of you is about to come on. We've created the documentary about you, and the opening scene to your life documentary is about to begin. What song is playing and why?
Oh, Stevie Wonder, all I do is think of you. No matter where I'm at, no matter how I'm feeling, the moment that song comes on, it reminds me of all good things in life. It sonically is a warm blanket. It's a sunny day, even if it's raining outside.
Listen, I don't know if you saw the smile that I had when you said that song, because it brings that level of joy to me every time I hear that song. And it's funny during.
Shout out to Michael Jackson singing background.
Wait, Michael's singing background on that song?
That's Michael Jackson saying, "All I do is think of you." That's Michael.
Okay, you just took that to a whole nother level for me. I had no idea of that.
Yeah, excellent background.
But you know, it's so funny. During COVID, I took the time to start compiling some of my favorite songs and making a playlist, because we obviously were all going through so many different things. And I found that I needed a tool or a resource that I could just go to, that I knew no matter what was happening, a smile and joy was going to come to my spirit based off of this playlist. And obviously, one of the first songs was that, for sure, hands down. And Stevie had a ton of songs on that playlist. Yeah, it's just that joy that you just talked about. He exudes that on a number of his records. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that as the song that's going to be in the opening scene of your documentary.
There you go, 1000%.
I love it. Well, look, we always end these with, asking what 3 seeds you'd want to leave with the stewards of culture moving forward. And these are 3 key elements or things that you feel are going to be necessary to equip those who are going to be, shaping and molding culture as we know it moving forward, and the things that we deem so precious in our IPs. What would those 3 things be?
3 seeds of culture that I'd like to leave.
Well, 3 seeds. And when we make the correlation to seeds like a farmer, right? Farmers plant these seeds, they water them, they nurture them, and then they grow into these amazing, beautiful things, or sometimes not, based off of how they're cared for. Okay. So what are the 3 things that you would impart on the stewards of culture moving forward to say, these are the 3 things I would recommend you being cognizant of and employing and activating and being cognizant of no matter what?
Okay, I'd plant 1 seed, and then I'd open the packaged seed, and it would be individuality. And I would say, as I plant that seed of individuality, from what grows there, it should be uniquely yourself, uniquely its own thing. Plant that, fertilize it, develop it, individuality. The second thing I would plant, I'd plant a seed of global, because and the world is very big, and it's funny because I was just last summer went to a bunch of Rolling Louds. There was a Rolling Loud in Portugal. People didn't even realize that there's all these Rolling Louds that are taking place globally, and how much our music takes, is shaping everything. So. I believe it's important and I love when our artists get on planes and they realize that that there's people who don't speak the language, but they're sitting there singing your record word for word that you made in your bedroom. And the world is musically, the world is flat. It's sonically flat. And I think it's important to understand that, although you make music for your area, for your hood and your boys and your people, that there's a big world out there too. And I think and for good for artists in the many ways, travel and see the world. Third thing I would plant, man, I think it would just be like, let's just treat each other well, man. Let's just treat each other well. Like, a seed of peace.
And that for me, peace is everything. And I'm so glad you closed with that. And even your first one of individuality just plays back to, when you were walking through the different artists and their impact of when, the Outcasts of the world or the Eminem of the world, and how impactful they were by kind of painting the pictures of where they were from in a very authentic way. Just imagine if we all applied that to everything that we do that comes from within you. We'd be so much more of a colorful, bright, vibrant society and culture. So I thank you for those. And I really want to thank you for this time. I did not know you personally coming into this, and obviously doing my research and figuring out tons of mutual friends and obviously the work that you've done. And I just want to applaud you for the work, but I'm more so really excited about the work that you're going to do moving forward. And I think when you talk about your affinity for maintaining the integrity of the African diaspora and the music that comes from it, right? And the way that you're kind of advising us to approach it, right? In terms of having the footprint on the continent, doing the things and empowering those who are of the culture and within the continent to ensure that we do this thing a little bit differently than what we've done in the past. And for that alone, I truly want to thank you and applaud you.
Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate that, man. And I love what you guys are doing. It's so funny. I just got a call in between it. That was Tim Weatherspoon, by the way.
Of course it was. We all need to get out for a round of golf. And you can tell it.
Yeah, man. I want to come to Portland. It's so funny, man. Portland is a city that I've never been to. I've flown over it. I've been to Vancouver a billion times. I've been everywhere. But yes, I need to get to Portland, and I will get to Portland this coming year for sure.
We'll make it happen. Well, I thank you again and look forward to building more.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, man.
We truly appreciate your support because it helps us fulfill our mission of promoting cultural awareness and personal development. Please click the subscribe button below to help ensure and solidify our mission.